This is Real Sports Talk, Rumack and the Greek, featuring Billy the Greek and Stormin Norman Rumack. Brought to you by the good people at Cosa and Carpets for Life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stormin Norman Rumack, and my great friend Billy the Greek's off night taking care of his mom, so we wish his mom all the best and hope she's feeling better soon. And obviously, family and health takes precedence over everything. Podcast is pretty minimal in comparison, as it would be for any of us and all of us. So we wish Billy and his mom the best and look forward to having Billy back as soon as possible. And we wish his mom the best. And meantime, got our great friend, of course, Billy's great friend, my great friend, the one and only Marty Roberts, a former intercounty baseball Maple Leaf. And of course, our great producer, Jordan LaRoche. And thanks to our sponsors, you just heard their names mentioned off the top. Very loyal to Billy and I and the show. And we're grateful for both COSA, the Ontario Standardbred Horse Racing Association, and for Carpets for Life, Nikki, the king of carpets, Nikki, big Habs fan. So we're grateful for both those folks, obviously the organization, COSA, and for Nikki for helping us out and jumping on board in the sponsorship. So, all right, so we got a lot of ground to cover here. And of course, Marty, I just want to mention about the intercounty Maple Leafs. I'm sure you remember, or maybe you don't, the AAA Toronto Maple Leafs, who last played here in 1967. I'm mentioning them because my 12th birthday in 67, I got a pair of tickets. I went with my next door neighbor. We're both 12 years old, right? And I'm pretty sure we were the only ones in the ballpark because the franchise was about to fold. And it was at the old Maple Leaf Stadium. Yeah. So, I loved it because I don't recall having been there another time. We're sitting in the front row. One of the visiting ball players was chatting up me and my buddy because, of course, there wasn't really anybody else to talk to. And I was thrilled. It was like, wow, a ball player is talking to little punks like us. It was amazing. But, there's a store. Billy, if you're watching, I'm sure I know you're watching. I'll apologize. I'm not giving a free ad, but I have to mention this because it's part of the conversation. A store downtown Toronto called The Gallery. They sell all kinds of memorabilia, like for obviously Maple Leafs, Raptors, and Blue Jays. But they also, for a time last year, were selling AAA Toronto Maple Leafs baseball jerseys, that old logo. And the former hockey Maple Leafs coach, Punch Imlach, used to wear their baseball cap all the time. And their home blue shirt is gorgeous, but it looks like they're not getting them back in. They have one is small. I didn't realize until they were well into selling them last year. They still have the gray one, but it's like 99% gray with a blue Maple Leaf crest. But it's like, Marty, when I go back there and check it, unfortunately, I haven't got my size. I'd buy it for $200. They're selling it for $100. But I'll tell you, I remember, like I say, the Leaf coach, Punch Imlach, you can Google photos of him with the Stanley Cup, and he's wearing the baseball Maple Leafs baseball cap quite often. But I'll tell you, that's a beautiful shirt with a beautiful logo with the ML inside looks like a natural looking, not stylized or artistic, looks like a very natural looking Maple Leaf.
Yeah, I think once that league folded, or at least the Leafs folded from there, I think Jack Dominico bought the rights for the Leaf logo and all that from, I think was it the International League back then? I can't remember. But
yeah, it was.
Then Jack bought it and he took it and he ran it for 50 plus years out of Christie Pitts, not having anyone charge admission, and made it successful.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, Jack passed away last year.
Yeah.
And now who knows how long the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be around the intercounty. If they're going to stay at Christie Pitts, I really can't see them staying at Christie Pitts if they don't have Jack, you've met Jack. He knows how to sell that team. That's what kept that team going. People would just give him donations just to shut him up. That's how it would work, right? They said, "Oh, Jack's calling. We'll just give him this, get him out of our hair." They don't have anyone like that anymore. And I know Damon Topley, who is the GM and the coach, is not there anymore. He's moved on. It's going to be an interesting year for the Intercounty League. This will be the first full year after Jack's passing, and see how they do. It's what. The international, obviously, I wasn't born to see that. I know my dad used to watch it as well, and I think that's where Babe Ruth hit his first professional home run. It was that park down there. So lots of history there, which is carried on in the Intercounty League.
Yeah, and like I say, I'm just the store, the gallery was selling, but they only down to a small size. I guess they got a one-off on printing them and selling them. But that blue shirt is just like, it has Toronto and letters on the back and just the ML Maple Leaf crest. Just a beautiful shirt. And obviously, as a former Toronto Maple Leaf, Intercounty Maple Leaf, I thought you'd appreciate that. And
Yeah, you don't find that stuff. That old stuff is sitting around somewhere, and if you're lucky, you can get it and keep it. Like I have a friend of mine who's big into the memorabilia stuff. Has probably a couple $1 million worth of stuff in his basement in a locked room. And he's
yeah,
got Maple Leaf stuff down there from the Intercounty League and some stuff from the International League. He's got Ted Williams jerseys down there. So you
wow.
get that stuff, you hold on to that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That's as good as having, like, especially if they're in mint condition, like a Gretzky card or a Howe card or, Beliveau, any of the all-time legends, for sure. All right. Well, we'll get back into the mainstream sports. So let's start off on the hockey side. For I think most people watching the show in Southern Ontario or elsewhere in Canada, the two recent matchups, including the other night, the Maple Leafs and the Oilers, exact opposites. Out in Edmonton a week or 10 days ago, the Oilers finished off the Leafs in the first 15 minutes. It was basically game over. And in the return match at the Air Canada Centre, I guess the only bit of good news for Edmonton was Connor McDavid. Surprise, surprise. But he had another 3 points.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm just trying to get inside Connor's mind. Some of those goals between the Oilers defense and goaltending, Connor must have had steam coming out of his ears. He probably wanted to have a chat, with the coach or with Kenny Holland. Is like, if maybe it's just a one-off. Maybe for the Maple Leafs it was a one-off. So maybe just cancel each game out for both sides. But if either side plays that way in the playoffs, it's going to be a short run, almost no matter who the opponent is. So maybe it was just a bad outing, but especially for Connor, they reached the conference finals. People talk about, well, Colorado won without great goalkeeping. Okay. Well, there's a difference without great goalkeeping and the goalkeeping we saw in those two games. I mean, sorry, that kind of goalkeeping isn't going to win you a cup.
No, and you know what, Norm? It's the Leafs are in that same boat too. Both these teams are. They've designed this team, made these trades, and their goaltending is below par. Now, I liked what Dubas did with the Leafs. He got some defense that maybe helped clear out in front of the net. But we saw there Murray didn't play very good either against Edmonton, and Skinner was even worse than what Murray was. You're right. Like Connor McDavid has to be sitting there thinking, what the heck? I put this team on my shoulder every night. And then I have goaltending that is like this behind me. And it's happened for the last few years with them there in Edmonton. They took Campbell there hoping he'd be the answer, and he's not the answer. There might be some questions here after the season's done as what McDavid wants and where he goes from when his contract's up with Edmonton. I know he's still got a few more years left, but he's got to be seriously thinking about, do I want to spend my time here?
Well, and if I'm, you're right. If I'm Connor McDavid, end of the season, if they have a short run, not matching what they did last year, or at least not going to 7 games if they're going to go out earlier, you're right. He's contractually obligated, and I think Ken Holland has the last say in moving. But if Connor chats with Ken Holland, if I'm Ken Holland, he's a hell of a GM. I mean, the guy's a Stanley Cup winner. He's a proven commodity, right? Very well respected, very smart. But still, if I've got an unhappy Connor McDavid and I'm Ken Holland, you can bet I'll turn every rock over in the organization to make sure Connor's feeling happy about whatever changes they've got to make. Because, it's one thing, you can lose any game by a goal or two, but it was either, the 4th or 5th Leaf goal? It looked like a 3 goals here in on the driveway, like a 5-hole between the legs, and it was like not even that hard of a shot. It was like I was thinking, did I actually just see that? I'm not knocking the Leaf player. It doesn't matter. You score a goal, you score the goal. They all count. But the kind of goal that went in was like, that's barely AHL kind of stuff.
Here's the thing, Norm. Does Edmonton GM think about looking to move a Draisaitl or Nugent Hopkins to see if he can get a goaltender that can win them games?
I don't think Connor would want Draisaitl or Hyman. I think he would insist, sorry, you're not touching those two in particular. I certainly not. I think Draisaitl is almost as untradeable for Edmonton as may not think it's the best, but somewhere along like Mitch Marner for Toronto. I think they're about the same to both franchises.
Yeah, you might be right. They have to do something there. And then, on the other flip side, the Leafs, they're coming up more against it with Matthews. What are they going to do with Matthews? Matthews, if they get any inkling over the offseason that Matthews doesn't want to sign a long-term deal and play the year out, do they go into the year with Matthews on the team, or do they look to trade him? Dubas going to have some tough decisions to make because they have 15 free agents over the next 2 years that they have to sign, and one of them is Matthews. The other one is maybe Nylander.
Yeah, I don't put it this way. If Austin wants to play the field, and I can't blame him. Okay, I mean, okay,
Yep.
I think we all agree Connor McDavid is on another planet, on another universe. If not, even all due respect to Austin, he's not on that same level. But let's say Austin is just behind, right, in that group
Yep.
of great players, franchise type players. And it's first of all, the question would be, is Dubas going to survive the offseason? That depends on how the Leafs perform. So there's question A. But regardless of who this GM is, here's the possibilities for Austin. If I'm and I don't recall his agent, but whoever it is, look, Austin just behind Connor can get that. Let's face it, he can go fishing for the best contract and he'll get it. He's American. And from what I understand, Marty, the new owners in Phoenix, they're Mexican-American. Now, I'm just throwing this out there. I'm saying that because, if I'm not mistaken, Austin's mom is Mexican-American. Well, the other thing I understand is, I could be wrong, but, I think Austin's quite comfortable back home. He spends, I think, most of his off season, aside from whatever work he may be doing with the U.S. men's team. Okay. But that aside, I think most of the time, I'll apologize right now if I'm wrong. I don't think he spends a lot of off time in Toronto. I'm not faulting. I'm just saying. So in other words, if playing back home, and, like most people, I'm sure he's very close with his folks and his sister. So maybe if, because it's not this summer, the next summer, if Leafs haven't re-signed or re-upped with Austin, then all the teams can start putting in their bids, right?
Right.
So I understand they're going to be building a new arena in downtown Phoenix, like a state-of-the-art, where they should have been all along. So, if I'm those owners, say, you know what? If I can get Austin, I'll clean the house. I'll tell them, look, we're going to do a rebuild. You're going to be the centerpiece. You're going to be back home. I'm just saying and I'm not faulting Austin, but there could be a big temptation, or any of the other big American clubs who'll roll out the red carpet, and some will give him the money that he wants. And it's like, if
I just don't know if Dubas can, or whoever the GM is at the Leafs come the summertime, can they sit there and let him play the year out and lose him at the end of that year for nothing, like Calgary lost Gaudreau?
Well, the question is, when would you max out your return? Would you max it out in the summer, or if he's likely leaving, I'm thinking maybe come next spring trade deadline, not on trade deadline day, but when the shopping begins, the end of January, or let's say right after Christmas, any team that can have a sniff of a Stanley Cup can put him on their squad. Now, you're going to have to give up a boatload, but maybe there's one or two clubs who have enough assets in their development system, their minor league, American Hockey League, and draft picks, and maybe a couple of roster players say, you know what, we'll do a retool on the fly. But with Austin as their centerpiece, there's a guy, obviously, put him on any team, you got a shot to contend or win a Stanley Cup. So I think if the Leafs are in that situation, I kind of wonder, if you thought that you're not going to be able to keep him, do you try and move him in the summer where there's no pressure? Or do you move him at the trade deadline when every team's like, oh my God, if I get that guy, I might win a bunch of cups? I'm just wondering.
The only reason I would trade him possibly before the season starts, because then you have every team involved in that trading of them. Whereas when it comes down to trade deadline, you only have those few of teams that are there, and they're not going to trade anyone any good off of their roster back to you. So I think if they're going to do it and they get any, inkling of Matthews doesn't want to stay here long term, I think you pull that trigger before the season starts. That's just me, but I think that's when you would pull that trigger.
Yeah. Now, Austin doesn't say much, but I wonder how much of his decision about staying or going has to do with what the Leafs might or might not accomplish in the playoffs this year.
True. You just don't know, right? You don't know what's in his mind. Does he want to go back home? Like you said, we won't know until it's time to come down and sit down for the contract negotiations, what he has. I'll tell you, I was at the Journey concert last night, Journey and Toto last night, and they were wearing Mitch Marner jerseys up in their Journey members were. No Matthews, they were wearing the Marner jerseys up there. So maybe that's a sign that they don't want Matthews either.
You know what? The musicians who do that, wherever city they go to, it's a smart move. I'll give you an example of that. I saw the Eagles at Exhibition Stadium in the summer of '78. We were way up in the nosebleeds because I think they sold about 60. Yeah, no kidding. The Eagles, I think there was about 60,000 people there. Like, who wouldn't want to see the Eagles? And one of them, I'm trying to remember which one, Len Fry, one of them was wearing a Lanny McDonald shirt. It's like, of course you're going to do that, right? It's like, I think anyways, but yeah, it's a smart marketing move, right? Because everybody loves that. So I think a lot of the athletes have got hip to that. It's like, okay, give one of the guys a local sports jersey, right? And
I was at I Love the 90s tour the week before Casino Royale, and one of the performers had a Curtis Joseph jersey on.
Yeah, of course. It's brilliant, and it works.
Yep.
Where you go. That way you can bond a little bit more.
Yep.
With your fans. By the way, you saw Toto. I saw Toto at Ontario Place at the Forum in 1989. I was working for CTV News. I mean, those guys were all studio musicians before they were Toto. Yep. And I'll tell you, for a live concert, it sounded exactly, and there was no special effects. It sounded exactly like their recordings.
That's how it was last night too. I said to my wife, Toto sounds exactly the same as you're just listening on the radio, a CD, whatever. It was amazing that they sounded that good in live.
Yeah, I think they were a little underappreciated as a band, how good they were as musicians and in terms of their vocals as well. But anyway, back to the hockey front, I think, this year, as much as we talked about Boston, they've lost a couple of games recently, but big deal. I don't think it means a damn thing. But I think there is so much parity in the National Hockey League, East and West. And, your team is the Penguins. I'm going to talk, I think I mentioned this with Billy and when we had Rick Dudley on the other week. I would talk about Sydney, especially Sydney, Malkin. I think they call him Gino, one of his buddies.
Gino.
Yeah. So Gino and Sid is like, you know what? You could make maybe a bit of a parallel there with Tom Brady. No one last year before he retired. You wouldn't want to play Brady even if he was with a house league team because he's Tom Brady, right? There's that fear factor of what he can do on his own. Well, I'll tell you what, right now the Penguins in the wild card spot, I don't think there's any team that wants a deal because they've got, 3 or 4 guys still left from that last Stanley Cup they won, and especially because they're all dangerous players. I wouldn't be excited about playing the Penguins in the first round because those guys can step up their game in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and they got Letang on the back end. They got Petrie back there now. Raquel's been playing really good up front. They have some play. You're right. I wouldn't want to go against the Penguins as much as their goaltending still is up and down. Jari sometimes plays really good. DeSmith. Last year they were making a little bit of run. They end up losing Jari, DeSmith. They had to go to the third string goalie. So I would be scared. And right now I think it's Carolina that Pittsburgh would play in the first round. I believe that's where they'd be, but I wouldn't want to play Pittsburgh. You're absolutely right with guys like Crosby and Milk. And here's a funny thing so you think of the Penguins, all the years they've been around, and you know who the leading penalty minute getter is now for the Pittsburgh Penguins? He just said it the other night.
I'm going to guess it's one of their skilled players. No?
Malkin.
Well, there you go.
Right, Malkin, not a physical player, not a fighter, but leads now the Pittsburgh Penguins in penalty minutes for a career.
Yeah, well, you know what, and that's to his credit because it's like I think that inspires the guys on the second, third, fourth, whatever line that hey, if Gino's willing to rough it up a little bit and put himself at risk, and I think once or twice, not often, but between him and Sid, I think just also to lift up the bench. I think we've seen both those fellas over the years drop the gloves a time or two.
Yeah, you're right, and they do it. They do what has to be done to win the games. And here's another thing that they did, and with the Leafs, this is why there's so much against the cap right now. Is their star players took less money to stay in Pittsburgh to win.
Yep.
Whereas the Leaf guys wanted as much as they could get, and that's sort of put them against the cap, and they can't go out and get what they need all the time because of where they're at. But the Penguins, over all the years, when Murray was there, Jagger was there, these guys took less money to stay in Pittsburgh to build a winner than they could have got on the open market. And that's what teams have to do nowadays with the cap in order to win.
Well, you're right. And that's always going to be a bit of a, drawback for the Maple Leafs. I mean, I don't know how, for example, McCabe, how good is he going to be in the playoffs? I mean, and I won't say, it would be unfair to say, well, Connor McDavid skated right through him. Well, Connor skates right through everybody.
Everyone. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter who's wearing the shirt or what the shirt is or which city it's in. It's like Connor McDavid is unstoppable. One great point that Rick Dudley made the other week is Connor is already in that conversation. If he stays healthy, and depending on the team, but not even really depending on the team around him, he's probably on the verge or just a step away from being in that conversation about the greatest players of all time. Because even if Marty, if we bring in the greatest Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, go right down the list. I didn't get to see Rocket Richard play, but
you're kidding. I thought for sure you would have got to see Rocket Richard live.
I'm just I'm dinosaurish now at 60, almost 68, but I'd have to be about 10 years older to see the Rocket. But in all seriousness, like in history, including some of those greats, who could just skate through a team no matter what they do because his speed, size, strength, acceleration, and skill is that combination. I don't think I've seen that before in terms of those particular traits where someone doesn't even matter who the opponent is. You got to hope that he'll pass it, or that you can at least maybe block his shot or just shield him or delay him from getting to the net. I think that
what's amazing about him, Norm, too, is how fast he can change speeds.
Yeah.
Like within one stride, he's already at top speed.
Yeah. And his ability to move the puck at those speeds. Remember the goal was 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember who he was playing. It wasn't the Bruins, but he took a shot from the side of the net, bounced it off the goalkeeper's back, off the back, like off the neck into the net. Like, who does that?
Yeah, he's an unbelievable talent. And it truthfully right now it's a waste for him to be in Edmonton with the team that's always been behind him. Like imagine him with a Boston Bruin team or the Ranger team.
Yeah,
right. What he would be.
No, absolutely. Or you put him on not Colorado this year, but like a team Colorado last year. It's like it'd be absolutely frightening. Like put him on any team, really. I mean, any team that's considered a reasonable contender for the cup. It's like, I mean, to me, I don't care who he's playing. To me, Connor McDavid is what they call in soccer, especially in the big leagues in Europe, box office. In other words, doesn't matter who you're a fan of. I'm going to watch this guy play just to see what he's going to do. And something, it was going to be one of those all-time great highlight reel moves because you just can't see that anywhere else.
Nope.
So anyway, we'll see. But do you agree that it's such a wide open field, East and West? There's probably about 6-7 clubs you could say could win the cup, including the Maple Leafs, by the way.
Yeah, to me, the East is a little bit stronger. And you look at those moves that the teams made at the trade deadline in the East, those guys are going to be battling each other in the playoffs. And whoever comes out of there could be beat up facing a West side. And you look at Colorado. Colorado's had a bunch of injuries as well.
Yeah.
Landon Scott's been out all year. Now there's talk he might not come back to the playoffs. So they've had some injuries as well. Makar was out for a little bit. If they get straightened away, they're a team in the West that you got to start watching out for. So you're right. It could go. Anyone could win this that gets into the playoffs this year. There's no one that you can say, no, they have zero chance. It's everyone who gets in this has a shot to hoist Lord Stanley.
And we talked about the wild cards in the East. So imagine you're the top seed, top 2 seeds in the West. And who do you draw? For God's sakes, Colorado. Can you imagine a more unfair wild card draw than Colorado and Edmonton? You get Connor McDavid in the bloody first round. That's your wild card opponent.
Yeah, you're right. Like you look at that and like you were just saying, Pittsburgh could be a team that a top team's got to face. Colorado, Edmonton. It's going to be an interesting time when the playoffs roll around. Was there about 15, 16 games left for most of these teams before the playoffs are going? Crunch time's going to come. Hopefully guys stay healthy coming down the stretch. Like the Leafs, we know O'Reilly's out until maybe close to the end of the season. So hopefully he gets back in there and does what he's supposed to do and gels with the rest of the players on that team. But I'm looking forward to watching down the stretch and then into the playoffs.
Well, this year, because of what we just talked about in terms of the wild cards, it could turn out to be, it wouldn't be a surprise if the first round playoffs are better or much better than the semifinals and finals. It could work out that way.
It very well. You're right. It very well could be. And then the other thing is, then we'll have to look and see. I know fans are getting upset with teams like Chicago Blackhawks winning games when they want to get that Bedard pick for the first overall pick, right? So you got the offset, you got the playoff teams that are looking, hey, we want to finish this and win this. And then the lower teams like, no, we want to be last place so we can get Bedard, who's, could be the next McDavid.
Well, if I'm a fan in Chicago, or is Anaheim
Anaheim, Chicago, San Jose are all right around each other.
Okay. Is Montreal not far off from them?
Montreal's down there too. They have 58 points. So there's a, Columbus. Like Columbus is down there. Arizona. Like there's a bunch that could get them.
If I'm one of those franchises, especially I think, the fans in the more established cities probably understand, is like, wow, there's a chance to get another franchise player. I would be taking signs to the game in big bold letters. Tank. I'd cheer for the other
right
team.
Like the scary part right now is the team with the least amount of points in the league is Columbus. Do you want to waste putting that kid in Columbus?
Well, but at least if you're Columbus, if nothing else, I think about it this way, Marty, you probably know that if you're in Columbus, but if you get him, okay, you've got him for what, 3 years minimum? Am I right? 3, maybe I'm off. 3 years.
I think it's and then he's a restricted free agent, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say with the restrictions, let's say you got him for 5 years, right? Imagine, that in advance. Okay, just make the most out of him, keep him happy. And then if he plays out to be that franchise player, it's like, a year ahead of time, take the bids, and you can do a rebuild on the spot. And who knows, maybe he'll like it in Columbus. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, right? But you're right. Ideally, a franchise type player wants to go to a club, sooner than later that can contend. Marty Roberts, our guest, filling in for our great friend, Billy Georgiansakis. Billy is taking care of his mom, and we're hoping that his mom is feeling better real soon, and Billy's back next week. So, obviously family comes first and health comes first. So, we send our thoughts and good wishes to both of them. As we continue, I'm Stormin Norman Rumack. The producer is Jordan LaRoche, Marty Roberts filling in for Billy. And before we continue on, and we'll talk a little bit of hoops and some more hockey, maybe some baseball as well. Certainly, Marty, a lot of expertise on the baseball front. But before we get to that, Marty may not be well known, but Marty, with our great COSA sponsors, is the man who selects the particular race going back in time. It's like a flashback. And on music stations, they play flashback of great songs from 20, 30 years ago. Well, Marty picks out the COSA race to highlight from sometimes years and sometimes decades ago. And they're fun to watch. So, Marty, what do we got up tonight?
Well, we're not going far. We're only going back a year. We're going to Rosecroft Racetrack and the world record for a 5/8 mile track. We're going to watch that right now from Rosecroft Raceway.
Class C animals headed to the gate as they are headed for the clubhouse turn. Working on a mystery and David Miller, Jonathan Robertson, Sonny Weaver, Luz Pearlman, and Simon Allard. Allywag Hanover and Todd McCarthy, Tattoo Artist and Dexter Dunn, Leonidas A. and Austin Siegelman. And this is the plan for Yannick Gingras. It's the $125,000 Potomac Pace. This field is on gate. And there they go. They're off in the Potomac Pace. The early sprint here, as expected. Tattoo Artist and Allywag Hanover down at the rail. The Hall of Famers got working on a mystery. Fired up nicely on the pylons third. Sonny Weaver comes away next. Then it's This Is the Plan moving up on the outside for Gingras. followed by Luz Pearlman, and Leonidas A is the trailer. As they sprint to the first turn, Tattoo Artist and Dexter Dunn get the lead. In second is Allywag Hanover, 25-4 for the opening marker. Tattoo Artist over Allywag Hanover with Working on a Mystery pacing in third. Sonny Weaver End is fourth. Then it's This Is the Plan, who found a home in fifth. Luz Pearlman is next, and Leonidas is the trailer. Sprinting to the clubhouse turn, it's Tattoo Artist and Allywag Hanover. They are rolling here. They've opened up 4 on Working on a Mystery. Halftime, 53 1/5 seconds. This Is the Plan moves to the outside now for Jingron, moves up third. Working on a Mystery, failing at the inside. Moving up now is Luz Pearlman now from the outside. Leonidas is in gear, and Sonny Weaver N was the unlucky horse to get stuck behind Working on a Mystery as they race the 3/4. It's Tattoo Artist and Dexter Dunn. Allywag Hanover right there in the pocket second. This Is the Plan third. Luz Pearlman up on the outside. 3/4 in 1:20 flat. Tattoo Artist, Allywag Hanover. This Is the Plan. Luz Pearlman, Leonidas is into fifth as they come to the top of the stretch. 2 of the best in the world ready to square off. Tattoo Artist, the outside, Allywag Hanover. Allywag Hanover coming on the outside. Allywag Hanover and Todd McCarthy to win the Potomac Pace in 1:46-4. That's a new Rosecroft track record.
By now, you know the name KOSA TV, an industry leader producing unique, high-quality digital content promoting harness racing in Ontario. Features, virtual programming, live events, and more. KOSA TV has it covered. Follow our social media channels and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page to view the latest content. And if you're looking to bet your favorite Ontario track, check out hpibet.com. KOSA TV, taking Ontario racing global.
Welcome to Carpets for Life. For over 30 years, we have been servicing both residential and commercial clients in the sales and installation of custom stair runners on wall-to-wall areas. Our team prides itself in honesty with a regard of professionalism and customer satisfaction. Our many testimonials and continuous referrals is a testament of the quality of workmanship we provide. We strive to ensure a happy customer is a Carpets for Life customer.
All right, welcome back, folks. You're watching Stormin Norman Rumack and Marty Roberts filling in for a great friend, Billy Georgitsakis, off with his mom's, and I hope his mom is feeling better, and we hope to see Billy back next week. So we send them both our very best and good wishes. And thanks to Marty for helping us out, and thanks to those.
Norm, I was going to run out for a smoke, but I forgot I don't smoke.
Well, you know, I did. When I was in grade 7, you know, I don't have to tell you, it's like when you're in grade 7, you start trying things you haven't done before, right? So I remember I went to one of the classmates' backyard, a whole group of us, and everybody was still big shot trying a cigarette for the first time. I inhaled and I gagged before it was halfway down my throat. I never bothered with it again after that. That was the end of my wanting to try. It was the best way to learn, right? It's like I had no interest in it after gagging on the inhaling.
That's how I learned my first time of chewing tobacco, Norm. I tried it. I tried it. I swallowed a leaf, and I just remember opening the car door and just heaving all over the place right in front of a daycare that all the kids were outside at. And there I am puking right there because that was the first and only time I ever tried chewing tobacco.
So I'm just curious about that now because I'm used to seeing mostly, I guess maybe hockey guys used to, but it's baseball players we all became familiar with, especially, go as with the fan, go down to batting practice. And over the years, it diminished. I think it's been outlawed, but you used to see guys with it and they have their spit cup and all. How do they ever get used to that stuff if it's that god awful?
Some of it gives you that little high, I want to say, if that's the right word or not, but I just couldn't do it. Some guys they'll wake up in the middle of the night. They got to go get their spit can and have a spit and chew some can do it. I just couldn't do it. Maybe if I didn't swallow the leaf, it might have been a different story. But I swallowed the leaf and it made me sick. But I remember at school, guys used to do it while we were running nonstop for 2 hours, and they'd have this chewing tobacco or the dip in the front lip doing this. I'm like, I don't know how you're doing it. I puked from just driving my car.
Wow. And then it turns out that stuff can cause cancer of the gums and the mouth and all kinds of
all that. Like, I think Tony Gwynn ended up losing part of his jaw, and that what ended up taking his life, right? So it is very bad for you. It's, I wouldn't recommend doing it, but there's lots of guys that still do it.
Yeah, pretty surprising. All right. So, Marty, by the way, that race they mentioned, the Potomac, was that somewhere in Maryland? The race?
Rosecroft. I'm not sure. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure where Rosecroft is. I bet on that place all the time. I bet on tracks all over. I don't know necessarily where they're at. I just throw my money down, take the L, and look for another track to bet it.
Wow, you're into it as much or more than even Billy.
Well, I'm hoping I win a little bit more than Billy does. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping I win a little bit more than Billy does.
Yeah, Billy's never disclosed to me what his annual winnings are from wagering.
There's probably a reason why he doesn't let me go to the track with him. Because he doesn't want me to see him lose. There it is. Billy just told us Illinois.
Okay. All right. So, anyways, thanks again to COSA, our great sponsors.
What a degenerate he is.
Trying to think what he said about you, but I can't remember it.
He says so much stuff. You got to write it down to remember.
Yeah, actually,
something about my hair, something about that.
Imagine that. Oh, so mean-spirited, Marty. It must have left you like depressed. And then again, maybe not.
I went looking for a hat after he told me.
Okay. Well, whatever it takes. Anyways, thanks to COSA, our great sponsors from the Ontario Standardbred Horse Racing Association, and Nikki, the king of carpets, the big Habs fan. So, not quite this year, but I think with a great coach like Marty St. Louis, eventually those guys will get going in the right direction. Even takes a.
And they got young guys there too, right? Montreal's got some young players there, so they could turn around in no time. Like I thought they would have traded Anderson at the trade deadline to get, because that's a player that every team wants, but they decided to hold on to him. So
now I kind of I was kind of wondering, like. It's interesting because, remembering as I do and you do those great Habs teams, Scotty's teams from the 70s, 5 Stanley Cups, everybody on the squad was a Hall of Famer. And I guess, because outside of, obviously they won the Cup in 93, and that was Patrick Waugh heading up that team. They had a lot of great players, and maybe that Cup was a bit of a surprise. But it's interesting, boy, from a dynastic team, and I guess they say about Toronto, the fans' patience. But Montreal, if you've been there, it's a way more demanding city. And the difference, I think, Montreal and Toronto. In Montreal, if the Habs are lousy or the fans don't perceive they're trying hard enough or the management's being incompetent, they'll stay away. There's a lot of times you could go into Montreal. Leaf fans know this. It's not necessarily a sellout every night. And they did this with the Expos when the ownership started stripping after 94, right? It's like, hey, you're not going to give us a product? See ya. We're not coming. We're not coming. Whereas in Toronto, that is true with the Blue Jays, the Raptors. I know people say, oh, the Raptors always great. No, I'm sorry. At the end of the Vince era, when it was just Chris Bosh, there is a lot of games where basically 1/3 of the building, the Air Canada Center back then, was filled. And that's it, 1/3. So if anyone's going to try and tell, the Raptors have always been a hot ticket. No, they haven't. And guys, some people would say, because the tickets were too expensive. Really? And how? I don't think they're exactly cheap now. So no, it wasn't because the tickets were too expensive, because the product wasn't good enough. And the Maple Leafs are the only team I'm not going to bring in the Argos because that's not really the same conversation.
Yep.
The Maple Leafs are the only team, and I think it's because so many of their seats are corporately held, are the only team that can get away with being bad or non-competitive and without a cup for this many years, because certainly the Blue Jays can't do that, and the Raptors. When the end of the Roy Halladay era, I remember going down there in 2008, and I can't remember who was told me, someone who would know, their season ticket base had slipped down to about 4,000, and the building was about, 70%. I'm talking about the Rogers Center was about 70% empty. So no, the Blue Jays and the Raptors can't get away with what the Maple Leafs do. in terms of having a team that struggles for a long time. They can't.
No, you're right. And the Jays actually went out and tried to sign some guys to draw fans in, like Roger Clemens.
Yeah, that's right.
And it didn't happen at the time. It didn't draw the fans that they thought were going to happen, because you're right. The Leafs are the only one that can get away with not winning for all these years. All the other pro sports have to win in order to have those fans in the state. Now, baseball's changing a little bit. I think more because of the younger players that are coming up.
Well,
and now
yeah,
even more so
offers some hope. Right now, they're disappointed in what happened with Seattle, and I think, you know, they probably got some grace period. But if they continue to disappoint in the playoffs, it's going to be kind of like, I think fans are going to say, you know what? Well, when the Red Sox, Yankees, etc. come in, I'll buy my tickets, but I'm not going to buy a whole year's worth to see that, because that's what a little bit jaded if they can't do something in the postseason.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like they'll get the Jays will get more fans this year, only because as well the renovations that they're doing to the Rogers Center. Like those renovations are going to draw people in there to see it, and you know, from all the pictures they're showing right now, it's going to look absolutely unbelievable sitting in the outfield around the bullpen. It's going to be a different feel now, and fans will go there just to see the new park as well, the way it's done.
Yeah, I understand it's going to be more of like a feel of like some of those new West Coast stadiums where there's other things you can keep busy with if you're not like a diehard baseball fan, right? It's like all around entertainment.
Yeah, there's going to be right beside this. You know, the bullpen used to be, it was down low. You couldn't really see it. Now it's going to be above, and you can actually sit around it and see them warming up in the bullpen, and there'll be, you know, table and chairs around. So it's going to be, I'm looking forward to going to it when it does get all done. Like, it's a 3-year process, but this first process that they're doing is the bullpens, the outfield fence. I think it's going to look really sharp, and I think they said it'll give them another 10 or 12 years in the Rogers Center.
Yeah, well, I was wondering how long they could, you know, make the most out of that stadium. But good, if they can stretch it out that long, and it'll be interesting. And the one thing I don't know, I had season tickets, you know, for a couple of years at Exhibition Stadium. Then when they opened the the dome, as we used to call it back then, the Sky Dome. So my tickets were the 500 level right on top of third base. And back then, so this is like the World Series years. So back then when they opened the building, it was the spring of 91 with the, it was 80. What am I saying? It was 89 when they opened the dome. It was 89 when they opened the dome. So my tickets in the dome, like I say, 500 level, I think it was section 513. Anyways, right above third base, they were about $13 each. And I have no idea what those seats would be now. How much have they gone up there?
I want to say I saw it last year for $50. That's what I want to say.
50 per ticket.
Yeah, 50 per ticket. I know, like the 200 levels. I think when I went there last year, 200. I think my ticket said like $112.
You mean each one? Each
ticket.
Like I got to ask you, I'm a security business working class guy. That for me, other than maybe, and I don't have kids or anything, but other than maybe once a year. Yeah, that's like
it's getting steep. You're right, Norm. Like, only reason why I can afford this because our good friend Joseph at the Fired Up Network pays me so well with all those zeros that I get to go to the Rogers Center. That's why, because Joseph takes care of me.
Oh, so he gets you all fired up, does he?
He gets me all fired up, right? Now I'll use his word. I just put him over. Right? I just put Joseph over.
I've heard that a time or two from Joe over the years.
But you know what? Back to the Journey concert I went to last night. I was on the floor, so I got to go into the back where the platinum seat people get to hang out.
Yeah.
Now I know why they don't come back to their seat after the period's over for about 7 or 8 minutes after the period started again.
Because the food is so good, am I right?
Yeah, the food, the bar, it's unbelievable what's underneath there. You don't want to go back to your seat.
Yeah, well, you're right. The food, the drinks, it's like going to a high-end wedding or something like that, right? In terms of,
I was impressed. I've never been underneath there before, and only place to sit now is the floors when I go to a concert.
Yeah. So how many wobbly pops did you have, Marty?
Well, I had a couple. I had to drive home, so I had to stop my wife. The guys in front of us, they were almost passed out by the end of the show. They were hopping around all concert, and in the last 2 songs, one guy was just sitting around on his seat, not moving. So I don't know how he got home.
Jeez. Well, maybe by the end of the evening, they were wondering which bands they saw.
You were probably right. They were wondering why am I at the Scotiabank Arena?
So, Marty, let's move on to the NBA. So, what do you think of this? Like the NBA adding, play-in or whatever. It's kind of like the NCAA tournament. I mean, look. It's obvious what they're trying to do, marketing-wise. It makes absolute sense. You're trying to get more fans to come to the games when ordinarily their team would be so far out of it. It's like, why am I going to go? Their season's over, et cetera, right? So it makes sense that way, but you kind of wonder if one of those playing teams pulls off an upset, it's like, and you're a fan of one of those top teams, you're saying, it's like, so what did we play so hard for the whole year? And a team that's kind of like dragging their boots just to get in.
Yep.
Upset. So it depends which city you're in. If you're the fan of the first place team, you're saying, well, what are we busting our tails for? We can just be a playing team and go to the championship. What do you make of the additional teams now with this playing thing?
For the most part, for every pro sport, I've never been a fan where they've added playoff spots for teams to get it. I've always been an old school guy. The way it's set up, the way it should be. I understand why they're doing it. Like you said, more money in the pocket for the owners, right?
Yep.
That's what this ends up being. And they get that one or two playing games, whatever they get. And then they get the lucky draw of facing number one once they get in there. And it's going to be short-lived. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I honestly, Norm, I have not watched a full NBA game this year.
And what's the reason for that?
I just find that it's go down, shoot the ball, go down, shoot the ball. There's no real, like it was back in the day, guys throwing the ball inside, rough play. It seems like a foul's being called every 2 seconds. And the other thing that upsets me, and you don't see us really in any other sport, we got to take time away to manage our body. So here are fans paying, hundreds, thousands of dollars to go watch LeBron James play. He shows up into your hometown and he's not playing because of they're watching his minutes now. And to me, if you sign that contract, your job is to play for the fans that are sitting there watching you play, not to take time out because you need a day off here or there.
Okay, fair enough. So, by the way, you talked about, I like the NBA too, when you had players, briefly with the Raptors, but more famous for his time with the Knicks, Charles Oakley he could have played the National Hockey League. I'm sure you just teach him how to skate, right? Yep. Because it's like, hey, in the basketball terminology, you come into the low post, then you're going to get, and if you embarrass me, you posterize me, the next time you're going to get knocked down on your ass and there's nothing you can do about it. So don't come back here. And it's like, you know what? I enjoyed that kind of basketball. And now it's so legislated. I mean, you go back even to like the hand checking thing. It's like, I mean, the finesse is great when you get to see Steph dropping threes from all over the place. But there should be that element of physicality allowed in the low post. It's part of the game. Like, why should it be like the highway? Just do what you want.
Yeah, I agree. Like, could you imagine someone like Michael Jordan playing in this era where he was allowed to do and not get banged like he did versus the Detroit Pistons or whatever, come out bloodied up, but still no fouls called, but they just went through it. Now it's these guys, they get touched, they fall down, there's a foul called, and to me, there's just no flow to the game anymore. I'm sure, lots of other people like it. For me, over the last couple of years, I just have not fallen in love with it as much as I did before. I used to never miss a Raptors game, never. Now it's just, I just don't see any flow. I see guys missing games so often. It just hasn't excited me enough to watch it on a regular basis. Yeah,
I think that era of basketball when the low post was a danger zone, almost any team. Yep. And it's like, why do you have to make it easy for your opponents? And if you're that good of an athlete and you have to be tough to play any kind of a contact sport, then why soften it to the point where, and people criticize the NHL because, they've made the game safer. But it seems to me that in general, you hear much less criticism of the NBA about that than you do of the NHL.
Yeah, NHL is done some things for safety precautions and stuff like that, but there still is. You look at, we'll use Jordan's team, New York Rangers, Trouba. Like, he just goes out there and he just bangs anything that moves.
I think he made a hit the other night. I forget.
Yes, against I think it was Nylander. He hit. On,
and everybody said tough hit, but it was a good hit. It was perfect.
A clean hit, right? Like I told my son, he's a Penguins fan too. I said back in the day, it was the same thing with Scott Stevens. You didn't come across anywhere with your head down because he was going to lay you out, and that's what Trouba does.
Yeah, and with Stevens, you knew he was coming right under your jaw. So
I still remember the Paul Kariya hit, like blowing snot bubbles and that. And I don't even know, didn't Kariya come back like either that game or shortly after the play?
In that game, and I think actually it was scary watching him on the ice.
Yeah, because
his body was like, gyrating. I mean, it's hard to, like in this day and age, there's no way he's coming back later in the game.
Yeah.
And he's probably not for a couple of weeks. Scary. And, we all know, much more now about the dangers of concussion and whatnot. And
that's the one thing the NHL has done really good with their concussion protocols now. Keeping an eye, they got spotters in the stands. If something isn't right, you're coming off and you're getting checked before you go back in there. And the NFL does the same thing as well with their concussion protocols. So it's nice they're doing that, but it's awfully tough to play a physical game and not get your bell rung from every now and then.
With Marty Roberts. So Marty, just before we move on to some spring baseball, actually we're getting close to the regular season too, but Masai Ujiri. So the Raptors certainly individually have some very talented, exciting players, but it's a winning business. You're in business to contend for championships. Does Masai need to kind of like retool on the fly this summer? Because while this team is fun and can be exciting to watch, if you're spinning your wheels, what's the point?
You know what? If Masai doesn't win that championship a few years ago, and he's done what he's done so far up to this point, after that, would he still have a job? Probably not.
No, you wouldn't get this. You wouldn't have this long of a grace period. But, we're moving on to that's 2019. We're already into the fourth year or we'll be into the fourth year. And with most franchises, I mean, I don't know what the Raptors, I'm assuming they've sold all their season tickets they want to, but at some point, if the team is like, we'll just call it treading water, after a while, some of your fans say, I haven't got that kind of money. I can go every game. That's where you start to see folks cut back. And you kind of wonder if that'll happen next year. Maybe the Raptors could pull a miracle as a playing team, but I mean, I can't see them knocking off the Celtics or Milwaukee or Philadelphia with that squad, not in a, best of series.
I agree. Like he's had that leash because of that championship. And now, like, he didn't make any moves really. Yes, he got Portal in at the trade deadline, but there was other players that everyone's thinking, okay, OG's going, Trent's going. None of those guys went. And now they have Freddie and Trent that are free agents at the end of the year. Is he going to re-sign them? What's he going to do? Like, there's lots that Masai has to do here to bring some fans back onto his side, because the team over the last couple of years has not looked like it has in years past.
No, and you can only dine on a championship for so long, right? After a while, especially with your paying customers, that's where, after a while they say, well, when they get good again, okay, maybe I'll buy season tickets, buy more tickets than what I'm doing now. All right, so we got a couple more minutes left with Marty Roberts filling in for Billy George at Sack, as we mentioned. If you're just checking out the show right now, Billy's taking care of his mom. She's a little bit, not feeling well. So we hope, she gets better soon, and Billy's back with us next week or as soon as possible. And so our thoughts are with both of them for sure. All right. So Marty, let's talk a little bit of spring training. Billy and I have often talked about, do you think, because last year, obviously, you watched the two games with Seattle. We know what the story was in the playoffs. The bullpen was not sufficient. Seattle's bullpen cleaned their clock. So have they got enough of a bullpen that they don't have to be concerned about that this year?
That's a good question, Norman. And they've added, the Swanson in there, the trade for Hernandez. I like Swanson. I know Billy doesn't like that move yet, but when you see Swanson get in the game, you'll understand that. I think they've added a few pieces here. I think they're still, in my eyes, I think they had to go out and get one more lefty in that bullpen that could get right-handed guys out as well as lefties. Yeah. Whereas Meza can't get right. In the day and age now, it is that you're in there for a minimum of 3 batters. You have to be able to get right-handed batters out as a lefty, and he just can't do that. So I think somewhere down the line, there might be at the trade deadline, lefties picked up. Chad Green is a big add in my eyes if he comes back in July after his Tommy John surgery. The guy that I've always liked is Nate Pearson. If Nate Pearson is healthy and throwing strikes like he has been the last few outings, that's a big piece. You got a 100-mile-an-hour guy in the bullpen that can strike guys out. If that's the case, they have 3 or 4 guys that have strikeout stuff. And in my mind, that is better than years past. There's no question about it.
All right, now potentially with Baltimore, we saw last year, boy, have they got some kind of talent on that squad. We saw them going from, Baltimore, like, wow, This is a team worth watching, right? Because they got some very talented, very dangerous young players, and it's like, they got like years and years ahead of them. So finally, a rebuild in Baltimore looks like it's going to work for the first time since way back when Pat Gillick was briefly running that team. That's quite a while ago. So when you add Baltimore's competence and danger as an opponent, and overall, Tampa every year, no matter who they lose, you go right through it. I mean, for years and decades now, even back when they had Evan Longoria, whoever they lose, their scouting and player development, they've got someone ready. I don't know of any other team in pro sports who's better at it than the Tampa Bay Rays are. So assuming they'll be able to do somewhat of the same and be a pain in the butt for the Blue Jays and everybody else, this version with the much improved Baltimore AL East, I don't imagine the Red Sox are going to tolerate another season like last year. Is this the toughest the AL East will have been in quite some time, potentially?
Yeah, I think so. I think for sure the AL East is going to be one of the strongest it's been in the last few years. Like you look at Baltimore. Baltimore, I think, picked up 32 wins over the year before last year. Will they do that again? Probably not, but they're still going to be a team that will stick it to you if you don't take them seriously. They have, like you said, young guys out there. They got a couple guys in a rotation that are pretty good. So at any time, Baltimore can sneak up and bite you in the ass. Boston, again, they got players on there that can play. The Yankees, they already have 6 or 7 guys that aren't going to start the season because of injuries. And 3 of them are from their starting rotation. So the Yankees, if they don't watch it, if these guys are out for an extended period of time, Yankees could find themselves in a bit of trouble. And does Aaron Judge have the same type of year he did last year?
Well, it's hard to do that 2 years in a row. I mean,
right?
Some guys can, but not everybody can. No.
Right, and that's why I like what the Jays did in the offseason, getting Varsho. As much as Kiermaier, I was shaking my head. He's great defensively, great team guy, and he'll bat 9. And if he gets on base, his wheels, he'll score. Right? You got those guys. You got Bassett the added, and then the other pieces. I think the Jays did enough here to get this AL East this year, as long as they stay healthy. We see Vlad's got a little bit of a knee injury right now. But I like the way the Jays have situated themselves in this AL East. Even though it's going to be a tough division to win, I think they win it.
Okay, well, that'll be good news for obviously for the Blue Jays, for the city of Toronto. And then I guess they just got to hope, they don't get Seattle in the first round.
Right. And, and I've talked to this about Billy, and Billy wasn't on board until he saw him pitch yesterday. I thought Barrios should have stayed back at spring training and not gone with Puerto Rico to the WBC. And what happened yesterday, he got beat up pretty badly. I think he should have stayed back. I think Barrios is a big piece if he can come back to what he was 2 years ago. But him having that outing yesterday against for Puerto Rico, that could be a little bit of a sign that he's not quite ready yet as to what he was 2 years ago. And we got Canada tonight playing the United States. How big is that going to be for the baseball in Canada?
Well, listen, it doesn't even matter what the sport or who's playing. Just the rivalry itself is always, fun as it's like brothers, right? There's just this automatic bad blood, and you're like, oh, we don't want to lose to them. We don't want to lose. Both locker rooms are the same. It's like, because you got the whole continent watching, right? So
and the guy starting for Canada today, I've been lucky enough to see him. He played for the Toronto Mets organization where I helped coach. He's only 19 years old, facing that lineup with Mookie Betts, Trout, Realmuto, Trey Turner. He's got his work cut out for him, but I think he might just be that guy that says, I don't care who you are, and gives it to them.
By the way, you mentioned Barrios. Do you think something like that, it's hard to read a guy, but do you think his confidence might be that fragile, that a World Cup of baseball game might shake him up and get into his head?
I've always thought that's the one thing that Barrios has a problem with, is confidence. Like when something doesn't go his way, you see it just keep going. Hopefully that's not the case, But watching last year, what happened, that's how it happened. Once a bad start, he'd have 3 bad starts. Okay, he'd have 1 good one. I think confidence is a big thing for it's confidence for every athlete, but for Brios and Kikuchi for that matter. Big,
Yeah.
big is confidence for those two. And Kikuchi's doing it right now, even though it's spring training. We'll see if he can continue doing it. If Brios can find it, Jay's going to have a solid 5 rotation.
All right. Well, we'll find out pretty soon. Since it's the middle of March, so it's not
Right?
that
2
far
more
off.
weeks. 2 more weeks, Norm.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a lot of should be a lot of fun, as you say, especially with the AL East. Every game's going to kind of have you biting your nails, probably. Even with the Yankees, if any team can find replacements or call-ups or find someone to do the job for a while, they certainly did that with injuries the last couple of years when they needed to, enough to get by anyway. So
the New York Yankees, right? That's why they've always been that top team. The New York Yankees always find someone.
That's exactly right. All right, so we're just about out of time. So again, we wish Billy and his mom all the best. Hopefully, a return to good health for her, and hopefully we get to see Billy back here because, you know, Billy needs me for someone to scream at. Marty, you understand?
Are you surprised I didn't say, hey, can I get a word in? You haven't heard that all show. Can I get a word in here?
And that's after he's been speaking for 10 minutes. Is like, can I get a word in when I get the first 2 words of my sentence? Is like, so. It's brilliant shtick, you know, but he's a good guy. He's a huggable guy, just, you know, not so much on the air, but away from the mic. He's a great.
You know, I've known Billy for a while now. I've coached baseball with him. He's a good dude, and I think he just needs to start laying off of the hamburgers. That's all I think. I think he's got to stop laying off of the hamburgers, and those chins he complains about will disappear.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? I was wondering about Billy because Marty, I kind of miss it. For God's sakes, been about a year. He hasn't mentioned his moisturizer. Like, what's going on? Not a word
it's been
about
a while. You're right.
It's
been a while that he's mentioned that. You're absolutely right. So you're gonna have to bring that up next week with him.
Jeez, I might have to buy him a tube. I wouldn't know what the hell to buy. I buy the cheap stuff at Rexall or Stoppers. You know, you never know. It might work. All right, Marty. Hey, you're a good sport. Thanks for helping us out, buddy. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Norman. I love talking to you and Billy, and whenever we do shows, whether it's with the Fired Up Network or with you here, it's always great being on with you, Norm.
All right. Send my regards to our good buddy Joe, and he probably got fired up watching you. That's for sure. Thanks to Jordan LaRoche, and of course our great sponsors at COSA, the Ontario Standardbred Horse Racing Association, is very loyal. I've known them back from my time on the Fan 590, going up to Woodbine a lot and enjoying their entertainment, their dining. It's first class, first rate, always has been, always will be. And of course, Nicky, the king of carpets. Check him out. You need some work on your carpets. Your old ones, you're looking for new ones. And Nicky's a man. He's a good guy, really good guy, really down to earth. And we're pleased and honored to have him as a sponsor as well. Thanks to Jordan LaRoche, our great producer. And certainly, God bless all of you. We appreciate you watching us. Thank you so much for your loyalty, whether you watch it live or later on Facebook Live, wherever you get it. Thank you so much. We're grateful. And we look forward to being back with you. And hopefully Billy will be back with us next week. So have a good week, a good night. God bless. Thank you so much.